Another teenager stabbed, again. It's a headline that Londoners see so often, it almost feels routine, except there's nothing routine about burying children. The wail of sirens echoes through crowded streets. Police tape goes up. Reporters gather. A small pool of blood stains the pavement, and another family's world falls apart. This isn't happening in some distant war zone or crime-ridden country. It's happening here, in London, one of the richest, most surveilled cities in the world. A place where tourists flock to see the London Eye and Tower Bridge, while just a few blocks away, parents whisper warnings to their children: don't walk home alone. Don't take the shortcut. Don't talk to the wrong people. The scale of this crisis is shocking. Knife crime in London isn't just rising, it's spiraling. In 2023 alone, more than 13,000 knife-related offenses were recorded. And those are just the cases reported to police. Behind each statistic is a real-life story. A fight outside a bus stop, a teenager ambushed on the way to school, a simple argument over social media turning deadly in seconds. What makes this even more horrifying is the age of those involved. Victims are younger. Attackers are younger. We're not talking about hardened criminals or gang bosses in their 30s. These are 14-year-olds, 15-year-olds, kids who should be revising for exams, not planning funerals for their friends. And the knives? They're not exotic weapons smuggled in from abroad. Often they're ordinary kitchen knives, stolen from a drawer at home, or cheap blades bought online with no questions asked. One London police officer put it bluntly: you don't need to go to a black market to get a weapon. You just need to open a cupboard. For many families, this nightmare feels inescapable. Imagine being a mother who texts her son every hour to check if he's alive. Imagine being a father who waits up at night, pretending to watch TV, but really just listening for the sound of his child's key in the door. Parents describe living with a constant knot of fear in their stomachs, wondering if tonight will be the night they get that call. Whole neighborhoods are on edge. Young people walk in groups, looking over their shoulders. Some carry knives thinking it will keep them safe, when in reality, it only makes them more likely to be attacked. Police call it a vicious cycle: fear breeds weapons, weapons breed violence, and violence breeds even more fear. The tragedy is not just in the deaths themselves, but in the sense of normality that's creeping in. When a stabbing happens, the news barely shocks anyone anymore. People shake their heads, mutter "not again," and move on, until it's their child, their cousin, their classmate lying on that pavement. Community leaders warn that London is facing a generation at risk. Schools try to educate kids about the danger of carrying knives, but peer pressure and social media make it hard to resist. A single insult posted online, a disrespectful vid. Knife crime doesn't appear out of nowhere. No one wakes up one morning and suddenly decides to carry a weapon or join a gang. Behind every stabbing is a story of neighborhoods where jobs are scarce, where schools are under pressure, where young people feel invisible. Many experts point to a toxic mix of poverty, lack of opportunity, and gang culture. For teenagers growing up in tough environments, gangs often look less like criminals and more like family. They offer protection, status, and belonging, things every young person craves. But there's a deadly catch: once you're in, getting out is almost impossible. For some kids, carrying a knife feels like a shield. They believe, if I have a blade, no one can hurt me. But the reality is brutally different. Studies show that those who carry knives are actually more likely to be stabbed themselves. Why? Because arguments escalate. A punch becomes a stabbing. A threat becomes an attack. And what started as fear-driven self-defense turns into tragedy. Adding fuel to the fire is social media. Years ago, teenage disputes might have ended with harsh words outside school or a fistfight in a park. Now, they play out online, on TikTok, Instagram, and Snapchat, where insults are recorded, shared, and seen by thousands. When someone feels humiliated on camera, the pressure to save face can push them to pick up a weapon. A single video or disrespectful post can turn an ordinary grudge into deadly violence within hours. Even the language of conflict has changed. Teenagers post threatening songs, record, drill, music videos bragging about attacks, or drop clues about rivals in cryptic lyrics. These online battles don't stay on the screen, they spill into real streets, real buses, real playgrounds. Meanwhile, the police are under enormous pressure. London's Metropolitan Police have increased stop-and-search operations, hoping to catch knives before they're used. On paper, it sounds effective: take weapons off the streets, save lives. But in practice, it's deeply controversial. Critics argue stop-and-search unfairly targets minorities, especially young Black and Asian men, even when they've done nothing wrong. Being repeatedly stopped, searched, and questioned by police erodes trust. Teenagers begin to see officers not as protectors, but as enemies. This broken relationship makes it even harder to gather information or prevent attacks, because who wants to talk to someone they don't trust? Then there's the issue of funding. Over the past decade, cuts to local government budgets have closed many youth clubs and community centers. These were places where kids could play sports, learn music, or simply hang out somewhere safe. Without them, streets have become the only meeting place. And on the streets, gangs are waiting to recruit. When you strip away positive opportunities, you leave behind a dangerous vacuum, a space that gangs, drugs, and violence quickly fill. Many youth workers warn that the government is trying to police its way out of a social problem, rather than addressing the root causes. So how did London get here? It wasn't one single decision or one bad policy. It was years of neglect, of young people growing up in environments where carrying a knife feels safer than not carrying one. Where online popularity is measured by how ruthless you seem. Where adults only show up after the tragedy, not before. London's knife crime epidemic isn't about individual, bad kids. It's about systems failing to give them a future they believe in. Until those deeper issues are fixed, knives will keep appearing in pockets, and headlines will keep appearing in the morning news. These stories aren't just numbers on a crime report or lines in a newspaper. They're children. Brothers, sisters, friends. Every time a headline flashes, "teenager stabbed in London," it's easy to scroll past. But behind those words is a family whose life has just been shattered. Take Jaden Moody, just 14 years old. He wasn't a hardened criminal. He was a boy who loved riding his moped, a boy who still had homework and big dreams ahead of him. One night in East London, he was ambushed by a gang and stabbed 9 times. 9 times, on a cold street, just minutes from his home. His mother later said that no parent should have to bury their child, let alone their child who hasn't even finished high school. Then there's Youssef Mackey, 17 years old, from Manchester. Youssef was a scholarship student, bright and ambitious, the kind of young man teachers brag about. He wasn't in a gang. He wasn't looking for trouble. But one ordinary evening, after an argument with friends, he was stabbed in the heart. Over what? Nothing. A misunderstanding. A flash of anger. And just like that, a promising life was gone. And Eliane Andam, just 15 years old, on her way to school in Croydon. She didn't even make it to class that day. Her death sent shockwaves across the country, not because it was unusual, but because it was so painfully ordinary. A teenager walking down the street, uniform on, backpack over her shoulders, never making it home again. These names are only 3 from a list that grows longer every year. Behind each stabbing are parents pacing the floor at night, terrified of a knock at the door. Behind each murder are classmates leaving empty seats in classrooms, teachers writing condolence cards instead of report cards. Behind each loss are communities coming together to hold candlelight vigils, even though they're sick of lighting candles. Parents describe living with a kind of fear most of us can't imagine. One mother said she texts her son every hour just to check if he's still alive. Another father says he sits by the window until his daughter gets home, too anxious to sleep, pretending to watch TV just to pass the time. The ripple effect of these killings goes far beyond the families. Schools lose students, neighborhoods lose their sense of safety, and entire cities lose trust. Children grow up believing that danger lurks around every corner. Some kids even carry knives just because they're terrified of becoming the next victim, unknowingly making themselves even more vulnerable. It's easy to see knife crime as a statistic, but when you put faces to it, when you hear the laughter of a child now silenced, or see the dreams of a student now buried, it becomes impossible to ignore. Every victim is a person whose life was cut short not because of who they were, but because of a culture of fear and violence that has crept into everyday life. The problem isn't abstract. It has names, voices, and grieving families attached to it. And each time a tragedy like this happens, the same question echoes across London: who will be next? London's mayor and police chiefs have promised a tougher response to the crisis. The city has seen more knife sweeps, where officers search parks, alleys, and playgrounds for hidden weapons. Metal detectors have been installed at transport hubs, and penalties for carrying knives are becoming harsher. The message is clear: carry a blade, and you will pay the price. But many experts warn that you can't arrest your way out of this crisis. Policing alone is like putting a plaster on a deep wound. You might cover it for now, but unless you treat the infection underneath, poverty, hopelessness, fear, it will never heal. That's why community leaders and grassroots organizations are stepping up to do what punishment can't: prevention. Take the Ben Kinsella Trust, named after a 16-year-old boy who was stabbed to death in 2008. This charity runs immersive workshops in schools, showing children the devastating impact of knife crime. They don't just lecture kids, they make them walk through mock crime scenes, sit through courtroom reenactments, and even hear from grieving families. The goal is to make them see, feel, and understand that carrying a knife never ends well. Former gang members are also on the front lines. These are people who've lived that life, seen the violence up close, and escaped it. They speak to teenagers in their own language, warning them about the lies gangs sell and proving there's a way out. When a young person hears from someone who's been there, not just a teacher or police officer, they're far more likely to listen. And then there are youth clubs and community centers, small places with big impact. These centers give teenagers safe spaces to spend time, away from the streets where gangs recruit. They offer sports, music, art, and mentorship programs that build confidence and hope. But many of these centers have struggled to survive after years of funding cuts. Volunteers and local campaigners are fighting hard to keep their doors open because they know every hour a teenager spends making music or playing football is an hour they're not being dragged into violence. The message is simple but powerful: prevention is stronger than punishment. If you give young people opportunities, guidance, and something to believe in, you don't have to scare them with prison, you inspire them with a future. London is beginning to realize that saving lives isn't just about stopping knives at checkpoints, it's about stopping fear, anger, and hopelessness long before a blade is ever picked up. Knife crime won't vanish overnight. There's no magic law, no single police operation that can solve it in a week. But that doesn't mean London is helpless. Across the city, people are refusing to stay silent: teachers, parents, youth workers, community leaders, even grieving families who have lost children. They're standing up and demanding that the fight against knife violence becomes more than just a slogan. This crisis can't be solved with headlines, hashtags, or quick political soundbites. It demands long-term solutions that reach deep into neighborhoods and give young people a reason to believe in something better than fear. The real fix will take education, opportunity, and trust. When teenagers grow up seeing a future, jobs they can work toward, schools that value them, housing that feels safe, they're less likely to see violence as the only option. When they have mentors and real role models to guide them, gangs lose their grip. When they feel protected by police instead of targeted by them, they stop seeing the system as the enemy. Some schools are already stepping up, teaching conflict resolution and emotional resilience. Community programs are providing apprenticeships and training to show young people there are real careers waiting for them. And activists are calling for more investment in youth centers, more counselors in schools, and more support for families who feel trapped in dangerous environments. But the road ahead is long. London's knife epidemic is a warning to every major city in the world. If a global capital, covered with CCTV cameras, packed with police, and rich in resources, still can't keep its children safe, then no place is immune. Poverty, fear, and hopelessness are problems that cross every border. Until real change comes, every flashing blue light on a London street is another reminder of the urgency. Every cordon of yellow tape is another symbol of failure. Not just for one family, but for an entire city still searching for answers. The next time you see that headline, "Another teenager stabbed in London," pause before you scroll past. Don't think of it as just another statistic. Think of the parents who will never hear their child's laughter again. Think of the classmates who will see an empty chair at school tomorrow. Think of the communities who light candles at vigils, wondering when it will be their turn to mourn. This is not just London's problem. It's a mirror held up to every society that leaves young people feeling invisible, every government that cuts funding to youth services, every community that shrugs when children are left to fend for themselves. The choice is clear: cities can invest in young people now, or they can keep paying the price in funerals later. London's deadly knife problem is not unsolvable. But it will take courage, compassion, and commitment, not just from politicians and police, but from everyone. Because keeping children alive is not a political debate. It's the most basic duty of any city.